Vanishing Journey. Author's note: something cool that you can see in the Vanishing Journey contains objects from Maple World, Grandis, and Earth. This is because the Arcane River was created as a result of the Erdas that rubbed off from the collision of these three worlds, allowing for elements from each of them to manifest across the Arcane River. Upon visiting the Nameless town, the adversary was surprised to find that it was inhabited by Erdas that took humanoid forms, all of whom mistook the adversary for Cow and cursed them for destroying their memories. They found Cow nearby, who explained that it was because of them that the townspeople had lost their memories. Author's note: English needs better gender neutral pronouns. I meant to say that Cow believes themselves to be the responsible party. Cow also warned the adversary not to fall into the Lake of Oblivion at the outskirts of the town, as it would cause one to forget all their memories. They explained that the townspeople had been slowly losing their memories due to their proximity to the lake. Because of this, they had created the Tree of Memory, where they hung precious memories so that they wouldn't be forgotten. Cow explained that they had approached the tree hoping that they could find their own memories there, but upon touching it, all the memories hung on the tree had been scattered. As a result, the townspeople had stopped their daily activities and had even halted the boat that could cross the Lake of Oblivion. The adversary then met with Legato, the chief of the village, and offered to help restore the villagers' memories. Legato told them that the Erda monsters in the area held their memories and asked them to collect their happy, sad, raging, and joyful memories. After collecting the memories from the Erda, the adversary hung them back on the Tree of Memory. With their memories back, the villagers were able to resume their normal lives, and the oarsmen returned to ferry people across the lake. Legato told the adversary that he had been curious about whether Cow's memories were amongst the recovered ones, but he had found no trace of them when he had checked. However, he explained that the Fountain of Reflection, somewhere beyond the Nameless town, had waters which reflected one's past, though he wasn't sure whether the fountain was still there, since everything within the Vanishing Journey seemed to fade away with time. Cow decided to accompany the adversary across the lake after learning about the fountain. They met Kima, the oarsman, who ferried them across the lake on a large paper boat. On the other side of the lake, they climbed a large cliff and found themselves in a desolate forest with burning blue flames all around them. Just as they were about to cross an enchanted bridge, they were stopped by a girl named Reno, who told them that the bridge was an illusion created by the blue flames at the extinction zone in order to trick them into falling off the cliff. She then offered to guide them both to the Fountain of Reflection at the end of the Vanishing Journey. In order to cross the extinction zone, she told them that she would need to ride the flame birds and ask the adversary to collect solid claws from stone urdas, sticky oils from the blazing urdas, and hard shells from the soulful urdas in order to
I'm
prepare themselves
wasted,
to ride
sir.
the birds.
I
While the
just
adversary
might
collected the
be,
materials, Reno
but that won't
escorted
stop
Cow
me
to the
from
Fountain
hitting
of
to
Reflection.
200.
At the
Simmons
fountain,
just
Cal
resubbed for
regained their
25
memories and
months.
learned that they were the
Sacred School,
adversary from the
Sacred
future,
School.
and that they had fought the Black Mage at the end of the Arcane River, but had ultimately lost because they didn't have the crucial power. In order to change the future, they had used all of their power to travel back in time to warn their past self, but they had lost their memories in the process. They also recalled that Reno was a follower of the monster Arma, and that she was planning to feed the adversary to her monster. Cow attempted to warn the adversary, but Reno pushed them off a cliff and created a doppelganger to take their place. Author's note: although Cow believes that they went back in time on their own, it was actually the White Mage who sent them back in time to ensure that the adversary succeeded in killing him. Most likely, the White Mage modified Cow's memories in order to ensure that no one knew that he wanted to lose before the time was right. Regarding Arma, just like the monsters in Arcana, Arma was created as a result of Tana's influence in reshaping the Erdas across the Arcane River and transforming them into corrupted monsters. Meanwhile, the adversary returned back with the materials and asked Cow if they had recovered their memories. Cow told them that their memories were slowly resurfacing, though the adversary noticed that Cow didn't appear. to feel any excitement about it. The adversary then blew on the hard shells to summon the flame birds, fed them stone claws to tame them, and applied the sticky oils as not to fall. The adversary then took off first, followed by Reno. As the fake cow began to climb aboard the bird, the real cow managed to climb back up the cliff and defeated the doppelganger before climbing aboard the bird. The three then began to fly across the extinction zone, and Reno, believing that Cow was still a doppelganger, told Cow that she could escort them back home before she escorted the adversary to the end of the Vanishing Journey. Suddenly, Cow swooped towards Reno and the flame bird and pushed her off. The adversary swooped after Reno and managed to stop her fall before they landed at the entrance to the Cave of Repose. Reno told the adversary that the end of the Vanishing Journey was at the end of the cave. The two then pressed on, with the adversary harvesting tranquil solvent from the tranquil urda and lantern urdas in order to dissolve the slaws blocking their path. Just as they reached the end of the cave, an injured cow suddenly appeared and told the adversary that Reno was leading them into a trap. Cow revealed what he had learned, or that he had learned the truth about Reno from the Fountain of Reflection, as well as how they had lost their memories in the first place. However, Reno smiled sinisterly and summoned Arma to finish them off. As Arma launched his attack, Cow jumped forward and took the attack in the adversary's place. Their sacrifice allowed the adversary to defeat Arma once and for all, after which they carried Cow's fading body out of the cave. Author's note: in the same update that released Cow's original timeline and the Ellen Forest revamp, many classes got unique dialogue with Cow as we carry them through the cave. Me and several other people on the lore server spent a good few days playing through Vanishing Journey on each class in order to compile all of the dialogue. For context, this was long before the story replay was even a thing, so we had to do this all manually. You can imagine how painful this was to coordinate and accomplish. We were pretty annoyed when we found out that the writers had a generic script for almost all the non-Maple classes, with just one or two random exceptions. Nexon really did less than the bare minimum in acknowledging that characters have a story outside of the generic adversary template, and made us run around for hours to hunt it all down, only to find out that they had just given up halfway through. For explorers, Cow talks about how they had lived a long, free life with Sugar's help. However, they had found out too late that it wasn't easy to protect what they loved, though they tell the player that there's hope now because of them. This dialogue is shared with all of the special explorers and Jet, which is dumb because Pathfinder and Jet don't share the main storyline for explorers, and they've literally never met Sugar once in their lives for them to be talking about her. Despite many other classes talking about their companions, such as Evan and Myrrh, Cannoneer, oh, such as Evan and Myrrh, Cannoneer doesn't have any unique dialogue lines about Monkey, which is the biggest travesty of them all. For Cygnus Knights, Cow tells the player to seize the opportunity and carry out the Empress's will to protect the world. Cow explains that they had lost their memories in the fight against the Black Mage and had forgotten the promise that they had made to the Empress, because of which they believed that they no longer had the right to call themselves a knight. This dialogue is shared with Mihail, once again disregarding the opportunity to give him a unique script. Also, in case anyone was wondering, this script wasn't changed in the Ignition update. For the main resistance classes, Cow asks the player if they remember when Edelstein was freed from the Blackwings at the end of Black Heaven. Cow notes that they had risen up from the despair of losing Vita and had attained freedom, after which they had promised to help others achieve that same freedom as well. They tell the player that the same promise is engraved in them, though Cow regrets having forgotten all of it. They don't actually mention Vita by name at all, and instead just generically call her a friend. I'm sure you can already tell how done I am with Nexon, and we're not even halfway down the list. For Xenon, Cal asks him if he remembers the day when he had broken free from Glimmer's lab. He explains that even after being changed into a machine, his heart was still remaining human. Though he had lost his past, He had thought that it would be fine because he had made new memories. However, Cal notes that even after all that, he had still managed to lose his memories once again, and he wonders if things would be different if he had been stronger. This dialogue was really short and really incomplete. They completely missed the opportunity to mention his closest friend, Rudy, or even Beryl, his own sister. For the demon, Kao explains that he had known that he couldn't beat the Black Mage when he had faced his old master centuries ago, though he had hoped desperately for just one more chance to face him again, which he had been miraculously given. For his people, his mother, and Damien, he had focused all of his rage in order to face the challenge, though he had soon forgotten everything, including his rage. He explains that he doesn't think that someone like him will ever be given another chance, though he says that it'll be different for the demon. Demon Avenger really should have gotten slightly different dialogue because the whole rage thing is unique to Demon Slayer and his demon fury, while Demon Avenger has a bigger focus on vengeance. They gave Demon Slayer and Demon Avenger different scripts in one of the Limina dialogues, with the scripts making this distinction when they're talking about the source of their powers. For Iran, she asks where Kao has left Maha. Kao says that though she can't be sure, she believes that Maha has ceased to exist. She recalls how Maha was there with her for her entire life, but after losing him and seeing how she's fallen after losing her memories and her power, she believes that she no longer has the right to fight anymore. They missed the chance for her to have her talk about Lilin and say something like how disappointed she must be that all the time that she'd spent training Iran was a waste and she had failed when it really mattered. How is Nexon so bad at coming up with sad dialogue when they're normally so good at it? For Evan, he realizes that if he and Kao are the same person, then that must mean that Kao has his own Myrrh. When he asks where Kao's Myrrh is, Kao apologizes and says that he wasn't able to protect Myrrh because he wasn't strong enough, which had hindered Myrrh's growth in turn. He believes that if he had been more careful, he could have saved the world and Myrrh as well. Evan's Myrrh then speaks to Kao and calls him by the player's IGN, after which Kao thanks him and says that he had never thought that he'd ever hear Myrrh call his name again. For Mercedes, Count asks her if the people of LOL are alright. After Mercedes says that they are, Cow tells her that it's a relief to hear. Cow then laments that she had caused her people to be frozen in the past, and that she couldn't save the world either. She regrets that not only had she been unable to save the world, but she had also been unable to secure a better future for her people and her home. Without her memories or her power, she notes that it means that she is no longer has a chance anymore. She then asks Mercedes to gift their people a hopeful future in her place. For Phantom, Hal apologizes for being unable to protect the world that Arya loved. He explains that when he sees Arya again in the afterlife, he doesn't know what she'll say to him. He wonders if she'll forgive him for all of his failures, before supposing that she'd be kind and say that he had done his best. After which, he says that the only person who isn't ready to forgive him is himself. I think that this is tied with zeros for my favorite dialogue. For Luminous, he notes that he can't sense the power of light or darkness inside of Cal. Cal explains that he himself isn't sure, but when he came to his senses, the power of darkness had dissipated and only a faint power of light remained. He asks Luminous if Lania is doing alright, to which Luminous says that she is doing fine. Cal is relieved to hear it, explaining that she had sacrificed herself for him in her past life, and that she hadn't resented him when she had learned the truth of her current life. He recalls how he had given thanks to her and had promised to do better, though he had ultimately failed to protect both the world and Lania. He then wonders what she would have thought when the world had been destroyed, and supposes that since she was kind, she must have pitied him for his failures. He then tells Luminous not to let Lania down like he had. For Shade, Cal asks to let his sacrifice be enough. He then wonders if it would be arrogant of him to hope that his sacrifice will save the world. Shade then asks Cal where he kept Moonbeam's guardian spirit, to which Cal explains that when he regained his memories, he couldn't sense the spirit's energies anymore. He recalls how, despite being a stranger, Moonbeam had trusted him without hesitation and had given him her power that he would eventually return. Oh, that he had to eventually return. He notes that Moonbeam's spirit and her world didn't exist anymore, despite how much he had wanted to protect them. He then asks Shade if Moonbeam is doing alright, after which he apologizes, as he had forgotten about the curse for a moment. He adds that he's sure that she's doing fine, before reminding Shade that he needs to protect the world, adding that they both will remember the charge that had been entrusted on them, even if the memories fade away. For Ark, he notes that he can't sense the Spectre's energy inside of Cal, and asks if something had happened. Cal explains that the Spectre had ceased to exist, as he suspects that going back in time might have affected it. The dialogue here is criminally short, and it's really stupid that Ark doesn't even mention Albert, the most important person in his life, just like how Xenon doesn't even acknowledge Barrel's existence. On one hand, I think that it's dumb how Luminous and Arc get a factory reset and get freed from their corruptive forces by losing to the Black Mage, even though they're stuck with it when they win. On the other hand, it does make logical sense why they shouldn't have these forces inside of them, as Luminous struggled with his inner darkness before the auguries purified him, and Arc's Spectre is constantly trying to take over his body. If they were to have lost their memories, their corruptive forces would attempt to take them over, which would have interfered with the Black Mage's plan to have Cal help the player, and so it makes sense that he would have gotten rid of it, similar to how characters like Aran and Evan would need to lose their partners, since Maha and Mur existing would have raised a lot of questions. In Cal's case, they are always meant to die after fulfilling their mission, but for the adversaries, they still have the other threats to face, and so it would make sense that the Black Mage wouldn't remove their corruptive forces after Tenebris. It's a bit funny, because during the Convergence storyline, the White Mage tells Luminous that his darkness can't be removed, which is basically him straight up lying to Luminous's face about it in order to make sure that he'll have his darkness for the coming battles. Maybe once the story is over, he and Ark will finally be freed from their inner demons and get some inner peace. For Ho Young, he asks Kao where he's left his Tauti. Kao notes that his Tauti must have sacrificed himself. Ho Young's Tauti then emerges from him and calls Kao a buffoon before telling him to stop it with his sob stories. Kao smiles sadly after hearing Tauti calling him a buffoon, adding that it has been a while since he had heard that. There's absolutely no mention of Tai Yu, the man who literally raised him since infancy. For Zero, the script is the same no matter whether the player was alpha or beta at the time of accepting the quest. Zero asks Kao, who's revealed to be alpha, where beta is. Kao explains that she was with him until the last attack on the Black Mage. When he had woken up and had come to his senses, he had found that he was alone. He believed that Beta was killed because there's no way that anyone could walk away unscathed after losing to the Black Mage. He notes that Beta had always helped him, and that she had always been hurt because of him. For the time that he had been Alpha to when he had become Cow, or from the time, he recalls how Beta used to tell him that if the two of them cooperated, their combined strength would be unstoppable. However, he laments that he's lost all of his powers, and now he has lost his sister. Every other class in the game, Kaiser, Angelic Buster, Cadena, Kane, Ilium, Adele, Kali, Laura, Kinesis, Hayato, Kana, and Beast Tamer, get a generic script for classes not from the Maple world. Since this is gonna sound weird with only gender neutral pronouns, I'm gonna add a disclaimer here that Cow is talking about themselves through this script, not the player. Cal asks the player if they remember when they had awoken with the power of the Seal Stone. Cal recalls shouldering the responsibility to save another dimension instead of their own. Though they hadn't shown it, Cal notes that it must have weighed on them, and for good reason, as it was someone else's world and not their own. However, Cal notes that they had taken this responsibility seriously, and though they wanted to say that their heart was true, they found that they were not sure anymore. They then wondered whether there's someone better than them who can actually save the world, after which they supposed that they had lost their worthiness the moment that their faith had wavered. I don't particularly hate the generic dialogue because it works well for classes like Kinesis or the Sengoku classes, but there's absolutely no reason why the grandest classes shouldn't have gotten unique dialogue. Laura, for example, could have definitely had a line about her connection to the land spirits disappearing because losing to the Black Mage and watching all her loved ones die had irreparably broken her faith. I don't even think it's particularly difficult to come up with some meaningful dialogue when half of it just writes itself if you're familiar with the story and characterizations. It also makes no sense why Ark and Ho Young, out of all people, would get unique dialogue. If it's because the writers needed to handle the problems with their inner darkness, then they should have also given lines to Angelic Buster to account for Escalade, since he's technically her partner and could easily ruin the Black Mage's plans by distracting Cow or making the present day Angelic Buster suspicious when she sees a second Escalade. What's even dumber is that Beast Tamer gets the generic dialogue about saving another dimension from her own, despite the fact that she's literally from Maple World. Once again, the writers get away with being lazy, and the players have to waste hours of their time hunting for scraps, hoping that maybe the next class we grind to 200 will have something meaningful instead of just some carbon copy dialogue when they've promised exclusive scripts for all classes. I'm very well aware about how salty I sound, but if you had to replay Vanishing Journey almost a dozen times in a row and got absolutely nothing to show for it, I'm sure that you would be too. As the adversary continued carrying Cow's body through the cave, they were surprised to find that Cow was fading away. Cow explained that their body would soon lose its form and scatter into Erda. The adversary apologized and blamed themselves for allowing Cow to get attacked by Arma, but Cow told them not to be sorry, as their regrets had faded away because of the adversary. Cow then noted that it was the end for them, and that if they could, they would pinpoint the exact moment when they had lost. Though Cow wanted to come with the adversary and see the future with their own eyes, they regretted that there was nothing more that they could do after losing their power. Cow noted that they were sure that they had made their own mistakes, that they had made more mistakes aside from being tricked by Arma, and that they found that they were unable to remember anyone or any more, as their memories were fading away by the minute. They then apologized to the adversary for not being able to warn them about any further fatal mistake that they had made, after which they asked the adversary to take their body to the waterfall up ahead. At the waterfall, Cow explained that they had one last important thing to say. Cow explained that both of them had succeeded in changing the future through the adversary surviving Arma with their power intact. Cow told the adversary that they needed to obtain the arcane symbols, the crucial power needed to defeat the Black Mage that Cow had failed to obtain. Cow also explained that the adversary would encounter Urdas of all shape and sizes across the arcane river. Though many threats existed in the shadows, there were also just as many allies who would help them on their journey. Cow then vanished, leaving behind their arcane symbol. Author's note: this fulfills Cow's mission to warn their past selves about Arma. In Cow's original timeline, a chunk of their power was drained by Arma, and this weakness made them unable to protect Ollie in Esfera, leading to her death and catalyzing the events which would lead to their defeat at the hands of the Black Mage. For a complete timeline of Cow's journey, see the notes at the end of Limina.